what is the current state of things with Black Lives Matter? John, I'll start with you.
This recent moment has been very interesting. We've seen a massive uptick in our traffic on our website, going from a couple emails a week to hundreds of emails a day. And in one sense, we really appreciate that new energy. On the other sense, it's slightly frustrating because we haven't gone anywhere, right? We've been here, we've been doing work. And I think what a lot of people don't realize about Black Lives Matter in specific is that we are an organization with affiliate chapters, and we run programs, and we have to do the same type of fundraising as any other group. The primary difference is that our individual chapters have a lot of autonomy as to what we choose to focus on. And that's based upon the idea that what we need in Detroit is completely different from what you might need in Louisville or in San Diego. And so I think this recent movement has been obviously of benefit in some senses because it's kind of refocused the attention on the movement for Black lives. And it's our job now to make sure that we can leverage that and continue that momentum, because this moment for us doesn't fade away. We continue to do the work long after the cameras have stopped rolling.
Yeah. Curtis, can you talk about Detroit and the momentum we've seen here, the specific protests and the response from police, and what you see as either the opportunity or maybe the frustration of where we are at this point?
So I just wanted to lift up that the 100-day mark for the marches did happen a few weeks ago, which I feel is something wonderful. And also saying that our protesters here in Detroit have been completely nonviolent during those 100 days. And in the moments of them being nonviolent, they were met with brutality, and also a spin on the narrative from Chief Craig, spinning that the protesters are actually like outside agitators and that they were also being violent, which is completely untrue. So I'm really interested and really excited to see how the protests grow from not just in being protests, but organizing and becoming a movement and going forward.
So I want to spend some time talking about Defund the Police, which is a slogan that I think confuses some people. There's other people who've taken it and misinterpreted it intentionally to cast aspersions on the movement. And then I think there are people who are genuinely curious about, well, what does that mean and what would that look like? Curtis, I'll start with you. Talk about what you mean when you say defund the police.
Police have been a part of how safety has been framed in our community spaces. And so it can be really scary for folks to think about, like, well, if we're talking about taking police out of our communities, then who is going to provide safety? Because that is what those things have meant in our communities for so long. So one thing is defunding the police also means how are we able to reclaim the power over what safety means in our community and being able to provide actual safety on our streets and in our neighborhoods. And also lifting up something that John said earlier around reallocating funds. Police are called for to address mental illness within our communities. They're called to address domestic violence. They're called to address so many things that they do not have the training to actually support in those moments. And instead of those dollars and that money going into spaces that actually have the skill sets to support our communities in that way, those funds are taken away from them and pumped into the police system. And so when we say we want to defund them, we want to make sure that money is going into services and support systems that can actually create a safety net for our communities and addressing and supporting what's actually happening instead of further criminalizing people and surveilling people.
John, when we talk about defunding the police, for you, what does that mean?
I think it's important to think about our system and the way it was constructed in its full context. And I think oftentimes we tend to look at these issues in a vacuum and not at the intersection with which all these systems connect, right? If you go to buy a house and you have the home inspector come and look at the house and they say, oh, this house is great, except for you have 3 massive cracks in your foundation, you're not buying that house. It doesn't matter how many coats of paint you put on it, or if you put a new roof in, or you put in some new hardwood floors, that foundation is still cracked. And at the foundation of the system of policing were built in certain implicit biases, the criminalization of Black bodies. We all know the history of Southern policing as it grew out of slave patrols, and how those policing models merged during the Great Migration, which liberally you're going to put between what, 1910 to 1970. And 1970 was yesterday when you think about the historical context of how society progresses. So when we talk about defunding the police, we're talking about upending, yes, that system that Curtis spoke to that is inherently and implicitly biased, but more intentionally, I think we're talking about remaking a system that is more equitable for everyone that it needs to touch and for everyone that it needs to serve.